see in the past few years, you probably have an SSD inside, a solid state drive. Hard drives were great, lots of storage, had the physical platters. With the solid state drives, it's all digital memory on here. There's no moving parts. So again, faster, but the one, I guess, downside of them, and it's getting better, is the price per terabyte or gigabyte, essentially. You're paying a lot more for the digital memory on here. Today we're having a look at the latest from Samsung, and they're one of the leaders in SSDs. This is their 870 QVO, and it comes in a number of different sizes as well. Starting off at 1 terabyte, goes all the way up to 8 terabytes, which is phenomenal. We've got the 2 terabyte version. And the speeds are pretty good on here. It's 550 megabytes per second read speeds, and as far as write speeds here, it's 520 megabytes per second. We're going to go down to the Get Connected lab, and Steven's going to give us some number. Let's have a look.
Steven here at the Get Connected lab with some essential benchmarks about this new solid-state drive from Samsung. The 870 QVO 2 terabyte has a SATA 3 6 gigabit per second interface. This makes it an easy upgrade for most older notebooks or desktop systems. One of the strengths of the Samsung 870 QVO are the larger available sizes thanks to newer QLC flash memory on board. This memory is cheaper to manufacture, making larger drives more affordable. Who wouldn't want an 8 terabyte solid-state drive? Since we're more of a video lab than a computer lab, we use a lot of storage in our Atomos video recorders. These are devices that act as both a monitor and a 4K video recorder that captures video at very high data rates. One of the nice things is that they don't use proprietary storage. All you need are standard SATA SSDs that meet a certain standard. So we were eager to see if these new larger drives from Samsung could meet that standard. We evaluate drives for this purpose using 3 different tests. Crystal Disk Mark gives us an overall snapshot of performance like read and write speeds in megabytes per second. The next test is the AJA system test. The test gives us a good idea of performance in 4K video production workflows, especially when it comes to storage systems. It also tells us what the minimum read and write speeds are and shows any variations. This is very important to us because a drive that can't sustain a high performance can fail to capture footage. Finally, we're going to be doing a drag and drop test to see how quickly this drive writes a very large 49 gigabyte file. All tests will be performed using a G-Tech Atomos Caddy reader on a USB 3.0 interface. We've installed all the drives into cases compatible with this reader. Our focus will be on the read and write speeds in megabytes per second throughout our tests. As a quick test note, we are aware that the USB 3.0 interface used by the Atomos reader is not as fast as the native SATA 3 interface on the Samsung 870 QVO. This will only impact our recorded top-end speeds, but not our conclusions from the data. For science, we'll also be testing 2 fast hard drives from the past. A 7200 RPM Hitachi 2.5-inch hard drive, one of the fastest before solid-state drives came to the market. We'll also be testing a Kingston HyperX 3K 480 gigabyte solid-state drive, which is a performance model that hit the market in 2012. Starting with Crystal Disk Mark, it's age before beauty with the Hitachi. The Hitachi lays down the baseline for us. Next, we're going vintage with the Kingston HyperX 3K. There's no surprise that it is significantly faster than the more senior Hitachi. The Samsung 870 QVO is up to bat. While read speeds are the best of the field, its write speeds are off the pace from the older HyperX 3K. We're starting our AJA system tests off with the Hitachi laying down the baseline. Results aren't too significantly different than the ones in Crystal Disk Mark. Here's a look at its minimum write and read speeds. You'll see some high variations in read and write speeds, which immediately takes the drive off our list if we were considering it in our video production workflow for 4K. Next, the HyperX 3K is up. Read and write speeds are expectedly better than the Hitachi, and also not unexpectedly, the minimum write and read speeds are even better. The performance curves show a fairly even performance. Finally, the Samsung 870 QVO is on the run. Write speeds are significantly lower than the HyperX 3K. However, read speeds are slightly better. The minimum write speeds were also much lower than the HyperX 3K, and significant variations in the graph immediately disqualify it from our 4K production workflow. It does do a significantly better job in the read tests. On to our last test, we drag and drop a sizable 49GB file onto each drive to see how long it takes. We also note any strange drops in performance that could affect our video production workflow in 4K. The Hitachi ends up with a time of 6:39. Speeds were reasonably consistent with the usual spin up at the beginning as those platters rev up to 7200 RPM. The HyperX 3K gives us a time of 4:18. Speeds were also very consistent across the board, around 190 megabytes per second or higher, with no notable drops in performance. The Samsung 870 QVO puts in its performance and comes in at 439. As foreshadowed by the other tests, write speeds are not where it shines. We noticed around 70% into the transfer, the performance dropped down to around 120 megabytes per second. Now for reference, this is as fast as the Hitachi, which is a platter-based hard drive. What conclusion can we come to about the Samsung 870 QVO? Well, we can take it off the list of drives that we would consider for use in our 4K video production lab. The write speeds simply aren't consistent enough for us to consider it. So where does the Samsung 870 QVO actually fit in? Because platter-based drives in most systems these days are commonly 1 terabyte, the Samsung 870 QVO makes an easy swap-in upgrade for most consumers. The larger the drive you're replacing, the more appealing the Samsung becomes thanks to its advantage all the way to 8 terabytes. Size is what makes the difference here. For anyone still using a platter-based hard drive, a solid-state drive is a fantastic upgrade. It's the one thing that every computer enthusiast agrees on. But what about the write performance? Think about how much new data you write to your system. Most people will be starting their machine and loading apps. These are all operations that read from the drive. They don't write to them. And if you write files to your drive, they typically won't be the monster 49GB video files that we use in the lab. They'll be much smaller sizes that can be efficiently managed by the buffer built into the 870 QVO. We don't feel that you'll be running into this bottleneck that we discovered in any normal everyday use case scenarios. However, if you are writing massive files to your drive, and 1 terabyte to 2 terabytes seems like an okay way to go, then you might want to look to Samsung's own 860 EVO or 860 Pro series drives. You'll get a lot better write performance there. So that's the lab report on the Samsung 870 QVO. Back to you, Mike.
So those are the numbers. Are there faster SSDs out there? Yes. Are there ones that have longer life? Maybe. And that's the challenge, right? There's a lot of these things coming out of China and other places, but you just don't fully know the overall quality. And that's what you're getting for when you look at the Samsung SSDs. This is the 870 QVO. We've got the 2 terabyte version here. Overall, I'm pretty impressed, but I am excited to get my hands on the 8 terabyte.
Samsung has been the go-to SSD manufacturer for the better part of a decade, but with so much competition now available, is this the 870 QVO worth considering? Also, how does it perform? Let's take a look, but first, if you haven't already, consider subscribing for more videos like this one every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Now, you've likely heard of Samsung's EVO line of SSDs, but maybe not QVO. That's because this is a slightly more niche brand or arm of their lineup, and it's slightly different in the type of NAND flash it uses. Most of their normal drives use TLC or 3-bit flash, whereas this one uses quad or QLC, hence the Q in the name, which is 4 bits. This also does have an SLC or single bit cache, much like a number of other SSDs that both use QLC and TLC to an extent too. Now, SLC is generally a lot faster to write to, but can be a lot more expensive to manufacture, hence why manufacturers tend to use TLC or QLC for their drives, especially ones where they want to get a lot of capacity kind of built in. This one is up to 8 terabytes, I should clarify. Now, with QLC, it's generally a lot slower to write to and also less durable as well, but is often a lot cheaper to manufacture and cram a lot more data into a smaller space, hence why you have 8TB SSDs in standard 2.5-inch drive form factors. Now the thing with using QLC flash in SSDs is that they tend to have to rely a lot more heavily on their SLC cache rather than be able to have more raw performance from the NAND itself. That's evident here in my testing. If you take a look at the synthetic benchmarks, AS SSD was the first test I ran, and you can see that the reads and writes both are about roughly what the box and the website quotes, so that's okay. But if you have a look at Crystal Dismark and ATTO, you can see that the SLC cache filled up here pretty quickly and meant horrific performance. We're talking 80 megabytes per second across the board, which is slower than a standard mechanical hard drive. That's even furthered by my usual sort of stress test where I'm duplicating a large file set to test the controller and see reads and writes performance simultaneously. And that showed, again, about 60 to 80 megabytes per second pretty consistently and took 25 minutes to copy the 90 gigabytes or so of files. That's quite possibly the worst test result I've had for an SSD using that method, and it's kind of evident that if it runs out of SLC cache, this is an incredibly slow drive. Now I mentioned that the SLC cache gets filled up, but I didn't tell you how big it is. 6 gigabytes, at least by default. It does have an intelligent turbo write feature which can help extend that by 36 more gigabytes with the 1TB model or 72 gigabytes for the 2 and 4TB models, but in my case this filled up almost instantly. It didn't seem to make use of the intelligent turbo write feature and it didn't seem to flush the cache all that quickly either. In fact, I actually waited about 15 minutes between doing my synthetic tests and doing my copy stress test, which I don't normally have to do, but I wanted to give a reasonable estimate of how well performance actually is on the drive, but that didn't seem to let it flush. So the results you're seeing are fairly real world if you do any level of writing enough to fill the cache, and then that's the performance you get. Samsung do try and sweeten the deal with their Magician software, which is a nice bit of kit to have, or a nice tool to have around. It lets you change the over-provisioning, which can be nice. Also secure erase the drive, do health tests and performance checks, and a log of your performance tests. So again, nice bit of kit to have, but I'm not sure that it helps justify the price tag. This drive is currently selling for around £110 in the UK at the time of filming, which is actually technically more expensive than, say, a Sabrent Rocket Q. That's also a drive that you can have up to 8TB of maximum capacity in, but it's an M.2 NVMe drive with up to 3 odd gigabits per second in, or gigabytes per second in reads and about 2 gigabytes per second in writes, which is significantly faster than this drive for admittedly £1 less. I think it might be difficult to justify picking up this drive, especially at this price point. And actually, it gets worse there too. Remember I mentioned that QLC drives tend to be less durable? Well, the warranty that comes on a standard 860 EVO drive is a 5-year or 600 terabytes written warranty for the 1TB model. For this 1TB model, it's a 3-year or 360 terabytes written warranty. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that at 360 terabytes it's just going to stop working. And you're likely going to be able to well write above that, but the fact that they're willing to, or they have to set the warranty at 2 years less and almost half the data written is a pretty big deal. So is this worth considering? Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure who the target market for this is, considering the competition in the market, the performance drop-off, the wear life, and its price. And for me personally, I think I would rather go with something like the Rocket Q, or even a standard Sabrent Rocket, or even a WD SN550 instead, and get much better performance for pretty similar money. Now with that said, those are my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of the 870 QVO? Is this something you'd pick up, or do you know someone who would make use of this? Is this maybe for your work or whatever? Do let me know in those comments down below. Also, if you would like to check out the 870 QVO, I'm going to leave a link to it in the description down below. That's an Amazon affiliate link that will take you to a local Amazon store where you can see pricing when and where you watch this, because it can and does vary. There's also a load of other links in the description you can check out, from merch hoodies or t-shirts like this one, or also a load of other affiliate links from people like Overclock UK, VPN options, Streamlabs OBS, and a whole lot more. There's also going to be some more SSD reviews over there if you want to check them out, and that is pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below, but otherwise, we'll see you all in the next video.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Byte Sector. Today we are doing a hardware review. Haven't done too many of those, but we're getting to do more and more of them, which is awesome. We're really excited. Today it's an SSD from Samsung, specifically the 870 QVO, or QVO as I call it. Tune in, let's take a look at how this works. So the first thing to note is that the Samsung QVO lineup of drives started with the 860, and it's a QLC based SSD. In the case of Samsung, their QLC memory SSDs are all SATA. So right off the bat, we're not going to be competing with the NVMe drives of the world. That's kind of a pipe dream. So the 870 QVO is the second generation of QLC memory from Samsung. What does that mean practically for you, the end user? Not much. It means capacity is up to 8 terabytes, read speeds up to 560 megabytes, and write speeds up to 530 megabytes. Not bad, but kind of what we've come to expect from a premium SATA SSD for the last 10 years almost. Quickly diving into the actual drive, I like that Samsung does a metal casing front and back. It's got a premium feel to it, a premium finish. True to form, Samsung, top and bottom, and then the label tells you the model and the capacity and all of your details like serial number and product number, etc., etc. Samsung was less than, forthcoming with a capacity-sized QVO for review, so we have the 1 terabyte, and practically, I can tell you, I don't even know why Samsung makes a 1 terabyte QLC drive. 1 terabyte doesn't even make sense to me. I would have rather seen Samsung run a range from 2 terabytes to 16. A 2, a 4, an 8, and a 16. Not a 1, 2, 4, and 8 drive. But that's just me. Maybe the 880 QVO will go that far and fix this. I'll show you in the benchmarks in a minute here, but I can tell you, I don't know if my unit had a problem or my experience is consistent with what Samsung, puts out as a QVO, but I had a burst speed which was consistent with what I would expect from a SATA SSD. And then I had speeds plummet. File transfers that shouldn't take that long were taking 10 minutes. Speeds would drop from 500 megabytes burst down to like 60 to 80 megabytes a second. The other things to note are IOPS. Again, I've listed out the 560, 530 read-write speeds. IOPS are 98,000 read and 88,000 write. Yeah, nothing spectacular, nothing, blow me out of the water, 600,000 stuff that you see with NVMe, but that's because this is SATA. And that's on par with what you can expect from a SATA SSD. So, my only other point before we jump into benchmarks is I wanted to talk about use case. QLC is excellent if you want to use it for storage and archival storage specifically. So your photo library, your maybe music library, a backup of your videos. That's what it's good for. So that's why I don't see 1 terabyte as being even reasonable or sufficient, because my photo library is not 1 terabyte or 2 terabytes or 3 terabytes. You get the picture. Problem 2, Samsung's biggest pitch for the 870 QVO is its high capacity. It's 8 terabytes of capacity in that price to performance, or price to capacity ratio. Sorry, capacity, not performance. That's the selling point of the 870 QVO. Selling a 1 terabyte or a 2 terabyte drive doesn't support the biggest use case Samsung puts on the product page for the 870 QVO. There's nothing else. They talk about how it's supported by the Samsung Magician software, or, how you can upgrade with ease, or how it's reliable. But the biggest thing is the high capacity, and they do claim enhanced performance, but frankly, like I said, this performance is on par with what you get from a normal SATA SSD. I think there are other options at that point if performance is going to be the talking point. Other than that, go big or go more is what Samsung says. So let's see if it's worth the money. So kicking our benchmarks off is the SiSoft Sandra drive score. You can see here it comes in at 536.89, which is exactly where we'd expect a SATA-based hard drive to come in at. Definitely right where this Samsung 870 QVO should be. Moving on to the Crystal Disk Mark sequential speeds, you can see the sequential read and writes bang on where Samsung claims. They claim a 560 megabyte a second read, while we got 563. They claim a 530 meg write, we got 533 write. So exactly where we'd expect it to be. Moving on to the random 4K IOPS, again, we look at the random 4K reads, 98,240.7. The claimed from Samsung is 98,000, bang on. The random write, we got 83,808.3, which falls a tiny bit short of the 88,000 claimed IOPS for random 4K write. No biggie though. The problem is here, real world testing. So the synthetics come back matching the spec sheet identically. But when I actually started to do file copies, here we go. I mean, granted it's up against a bunch of NVMe drives, so seeing that it took 504 seconds to copy a 70 gig file is concerning. The problem is we saw a peak write speed of 461, and that's the peak, not the sustained. What does that mean? Well, real world experience, the sustained write speed, it peaked at the beginning and then sustained was somewhere between 60 and 80 megabytes a second. Now that we've seen the benchmarks, performance not so great. Not anywhere what I would expect from a sustained performance SATA SSD. What I can tell you is a 1 terabyte 870 QVO will set you back 175 Canadian dollars. That scales to 340 for the 2 terabyte, 675 for the 4 terabyte, and a whopping 1500 for the 8 terabyte. Remember, we reviewed an SSD earlier this year that goes up to 8 terabytes in NVMe speeds for 1500. So let's not get into that. End of the day though, a 1 terabyte Samsung 860 Pro is going to set you back almost $400. So this is less than half the price. A 2 terabyte 860 Pro will set you back over $600, which is again about half the price to go with the QVO. So now it's starting to make a little more sense. You're going to sacrifice the performance in a big way, but you're going to, you can basically invest about twice as much and get double the capacity for the price versus a comparable 860 Pro from Samsung. Here's the problem. Samsung also makes the 860 EVO, which is a budget version of their Pro version of an MLC SSD, SATA as well. And for $200, $25 more, you can get the 1 terabyte 860 EVO. Sure, on paper, it says it's 550 instead of 560 read, and in terms of megabytes a second, and 520 megabytes write instead of 530, the same 98,000, read IOPS and 90,000 write IOPS. And I'll bet you, haven't tested it, I'll bet you it gets better sustained write performance. So now the use case, the selling point of an 870 QVO kind of doesn't make sense to me, especially at the low capacities. The 860 EVO tops out at 4 terabytes, whereas this goes up to 8. But again, it just doesn't make sense to me. Anyways, guys, that's it for the review today. I'm glad you tuned in. I hope you have some, feedback about your experiences with an 870 EVO. I'd love to hear it, see if my experience was kind of consistent. But from my perspective, I'd hold off and see what the 880 QVO comes along with. Thanks for watching today's video. If you didn't like it, you know what to do. Give us a thumbs down. Leave us a comment below letting us know what we can improve for next time. But if you did like it, give us a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the bell beside it so that you get notified the next time we post a video. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Have a great day, and we'll see you all next time.